There are moments in life when you feel something inside you break, not from weakness, but from betrayal. Someone you trusted wounded you, not by accident, not in ignorance, but with full knowledge of what they were doing. They saw your heart as a weakness. They mistook your kindness for an opportunity. And with that, they planted a seed of hurt, of confusion, of emotional chaos deep within your soul. But here's what they never considered. That seed, it didn't just grow in you, it took root in them too. Because life isn't a void where actions disappear. It's a mirror. And the pain they gave you began to echo, first quietly and then like thunder. You healed, slowly, fiercely, while they kept planting damage, unaware that they were setting the foundations of their own misery. They thought they could escape accountability, but life has a way of calling debts in full, not through vengeance, but through natural law. And now the pain they left behind has turned around, and it lives with them. Pain was their weapon, but it became your catalyst. And they didn't just hurt you by accident. It wasn't a moment of weakness. It was a strategy. Some people, when faced with the brightness of another person's soul, don't respond with appreciation. They respond with fear, with insecurity. And in that fear, they strike. Not to protect themselves, but to diminish you. You became their target not because you were weak, but because you carried something they didn't understand. You had depth, empathy, hope. And rather than honoring that, they saw it as something to exploit. So they used what they could: words, silence, manipulation, abandonment, whatever tools they had to create pain and confusion inside you. They wanted to disrupt your sense of self. They wanted to cloud your clarity, because a confused soul is easier to control. But what they never anticipated is how pain transforms when it's faced with truth. They assumed you would break and stay broken. But pain, when walked through with awareness, doesn't make you smaller, it makes you sharper. It doesn't crush your identity, it forges it. It doesn't silence your voice, it refines it into something powerful, something precise. And so their plan backfired. They planted pain to hold you down, but it pushed you deeper into yourself. And in that depth, you found a power they never had. You found resilience that only comes from surviving emotional storms. You found strength that isn't loud or aggressive, but grounded, unshakable. They lit a fire in you, thinking it would consume you, but instead it burned away everything that was never truly yours. The old versions of you, the one that tolerated too much, trusted too easily, ignored red flags, those parts didn't survive. But what did survive was pure, conscious, and free. They used pain as a weapon, but in doing so, they handed you the raw material for transformation. And now, every scar they left behind has become a signpost of what you've outgrown. The very pain they used to try to control you has become the story of your becoming. The seed they planted grew in two directions. When someone causes you pain, it's easy to believe the damage only lives in you. You carry the ache, the confusion, the sleepless nights. You replay their words, their silence, their decisions, wondering how they could be so cold, so calculated. And while you're stuck trying to untangle the chaos they left behind, it seems like they've moved on, untouched, unaffected. That's the illusion. But it's never the reality. Because life is not a one-way street, it's a cycle, a mirror, a field, and everything we plant, especially in other people, eventually grows. What they planted in you was meant to disable you, meant to make you question your worth, your instincts, your voice. But what they didn't understand is that pain doesn't grow in a vacuum. It's not just growing in you, it's also taking root. When someone intentionally harms another human being, they do not escape the consequences simply because those consequences are delayed. There is a spiritual gravity to the way life works, an unseen balance that always adjusts over time. They might seem fine for a while. They might even look successful, surrounded by new people, appearing confident. But underneath the surface, the seed they planted begins to grow in them. And what grows from that seed isn't peace. It's fragmentation, misalignment, a slow unraveling that begins with denial and ends in disconnection. Disconnection from themselves, from their own integrity, from the relationships they once relied on. Because someone who plants harm into another's soul cannot continue to live freely within their own. Sooner or later, they begin to feel it, the distance between who they pretend to be and who they actually are. At first, it's subtle: restlessness, irritability, emptiness in moments that should bring joy. They can't find fulfillment because everything in their life is being built on a fault line. And that fault line was created the moment they made the choice to harm you, to betray someone who meant them no harm. You can't injure truth and expect peace to grow in the ruins. You can't fracture trust and expect your soul to remain whole. The same seed they dropped into your heart, they also dropped into their future, except in your case, you used the pain as a catalyst. You sat with the discomfort. You grew from it. You learned. You dug deeper. You rebuilt. But they ran. They avoided. They numbed. And that's the difference. Healing brings clarity. Avoidance breeds consequences. So while the pain they caused in you sparked transformation, the echo of their actions began to eat away at the stability of their own life. Relationships became harder to maintain. Trust became harder to earn. Guilt, even if never spoken, began to color their days in ways they couldn't fully understand. The universe doesn't forget, not because it's vengeful, but because it's balanced. Harm creates imbalance, and balance must return. So the pain they thought they left in the past starts showing up in their present, not in the form of punishment, but in the form of harvest. They planted something. The seed didn't just grow in you, it grew in them too. And the harvest always tells the truth about the hands that sowed it. Life is not blind, it balances the scale. There's a quiet belief many people carry, especially those who inflict pain on others. The belief that if no one sees what they've done, then it doesn't really count. If they can hide it, deny it, rewrite it, or bury it deep enough, then they're safe from consequence. But that belief is a lie. Not because someone might call them out, not because the world might find out, but because life itself never forgets. Life isn't blind. It's not indifferent. There's an unseen moral structure to how this world works. A framework that rewards integrity and exposes betrayal, no matter how long it takes. And while it doesn't operate on our timelines or fit neatly into our expectations, it does move with perfect precision. It balances everything. Eventually, when someone betrays your trust, when they manipulate, humiliate, or discard you as if your feelings were disposable, it creates an imbalance in the moral fabric of the world, and that imbalance demands correction. That correction might not come in the form of punishment, but it will come in the form of internal weight, the kind of weight that no amount of success, distraction, or denial can fully escape. They might seem like they're thriving, like nothing they did ever caught up with them. But inside, something begins to rot. Not suddenly, not all at once, but slowly, subtly, steadily, piece by piece. Because when you live in a way that contradicts truth, your soul keeps the score. And the more you violate that inner compass, the harder it becomes to feel peace, to feel real connection, to feel whole. What they did to you, maybe it broke you for a season. Maybe it caused chaos, confusion, even despair. But you faced that darkness. You walked through it. You felt what they refused to feel. And because of that, you came out cleaner, sharper, stronger, while they moved on like nothing happened. But they carried all of it with them. Because life doesn't allow a person to harm another deeply and walk away untouched. It doesn't matter how well they hide it from others. It doesn't matter how much they pretend it never happened. It doesn't even matter how they justify it to themselves. The moment they stepped out of alignment with truth, a silent reckoning began. That reckoning isn't always loud. It doesn't always look like public downfall or external failure. Sometimes it looks like success that feels hollow, relationships that never feel safe, emptiness that clings to them in quiet moments, a deep, unshakable discomfort with who they've become, even if they can't name it, even if they'd never admit it out loud. Because life is not just a sequence of random events. It's a system, a living, breathing rhythm of consequence and growth. And when someone chooses harm, that rhythm doesn't forget. The scales don't stay tilted forever, whether through guilt, disconnection, loneliness, or the haunting realization of what they've done. Balance always returns. You don't have to seek revenge. You don't have to prove anything. Life itself is your witness. And while you rebuild with honesty and strength, the ones who planted damage in others eventually face their own reflection, not in a mirror, but in the life their actions created. That's how the scale is balanced, not through rage, but through truth. Healing made you stronger than they ever imagined. When someone hurts you deliberately, they usually believe they've won something: power, control, the upper hand. They think the damage they've caused has permanently weakened you, that by wounding you, they've somehow elevated themselves. But that belief only reveals how little they understand the human spirit, and even less about what true healing does to a person who's been broken but refuses to stay broken. What they didn't realize is this: healing doesn't return you to who you were. It recreates you into someone entirely new, someone stronger, someone wiser, someone they never expected to emerge from the wreckage they caused. You didn't just recover from what they did, you transformed, and not overnight. It took everything. You had to face the pain they left behind when they walked away, when they lied, when they manipulated, when they made you feel like you were the problem for asking for clarity, for honesty, for respect. You had to sit in the silence they created, confront the loneliness they left you in, and make peace with the fact that you would never get the apology you deserved. But in that process, the quiet, brutal, internal work, something began to shift. Your wounds, though deep, became places of awakening. Your confusion gave way to clarity. Your heartbreak taught you discernment. Your tears watered the roots of a new identity, one not defined by who left, who lied, or who betrayed, but by who endured. And as you healed, you began to see things you couldn't see before. You recognized patterns you used to ignore. You no longer tolerated what you once explained away. You stopped shrinking to make others comfortable. You stopped betraying yourself to earn love that was never real in the first place. You built boundaries, not to punish others, but to protect the version of you that nearly didn't survive. You became sharp, not bitter, aware, not paranoid, guarded, not closed off. And that shift, that strength, is what they never saw coming. Because they thought you'd stay stuck. They thought you'd stay in pain. Stay questioning yourself. Stay wishing they'd come back. They never imagined you'd outgrow them entirely. They never imagined that one day you'd no longer need closure because healing became your closure. Now you carry something they lost long ago: peace, self respect, emotional depth, and it shows in how you speak, how you carry yourself, how you move forward without needing validation, without needing revenge. You no longer seek to prove your worth to people who once mishandled it. You no longer crave their recognition. You've built something far more valuable: inner alignment. And that can't be faked. It can't be stolen. It can't be broken by anyone who didn't build it with you. And here's the truth they now live with. They recognize your strength. They see the change. And somewhere, whether they admit it or not, it confronts them. It reminds them of what they lost. Not just you, but access to the version of you that believed in them, that rooted for them, that forgave them too many times. That version no longer exists. You've become the kind of person that their choices disqualified them from standing beside. And that reality, quiet, undeniable, and permanent, haunts them more than your anger ever could. You healed, and in doing so, you rose far above the reach of those who once tried to keep you small. Now they live in the house they built. We all live inside the consequences of our choices. Not just the big ones, but the small ones, the quiet betrayals, the silent abandonments, the times we could have done right by someone but chose not to. Those decisions build something. And in time, we come to live inside what we've built. The person who hurt you, the one who planted wounds in your life and walked away as if it was nothing, built something too, brick by brick, decision by decision. And they might not have realized it at the time, but they were constructing the very place their future self would have to inhabit. And now, that's exactly where they are. They live in the house built from every shortcut, every lie, every time they took love for granted, every time they used someone's loyalty as a stepping stone, every moment they silenced their conscience just to feel powerful for 5 minutes. Every moment they walked away from accountability and chose comfort over character. All of it is now the foundation under their feet. To the outside world, it might not be obvious. They may still perform confidence, still smile for the camera, still gather new people around them like nothing's wrong. But that's the illusion. Because inside, it's not the same. Their inner world has changed. Not from punishment, but from architecture. Because the structure they live in now, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, was built from brokenness they caused in others. See, there's a myth that people who hurt others and never faced external consequences are somehow winning. But that's the shallow view. That's what you see when you look with the eyes of ego. But when you look with the eyes of depth, with the eyes of reality, you see something far different. You see that no one escapes the impact of their choices. Not forever, not even for long. You see that the person who walks away from you after planting pain doesn't walk into freedom, they walk into delay. They walk into a version of life that eventually forces them to face the same emptiness they once left behind in someone else. Because what you give, especially to hearts that were pure toward you, returns. Not always by direct means, but always in essence. Their relationships now feel unstable, not because people are flawed, but because trust doesn't follow them the way it once did. They don't feel truly known anymore because you can't truly connect with others while hiding from yourself. And when you've built a history on half-truths and masked intentions, that history becomes a wall even they can't see over. They might have replaced you quickly, even thinking that something new would erase what they did to something sacred. But there's a strange truth about substitution. It doesn't work when the problem isn't the person you left, but the person you became. They thought walking away from you meant walking toward peace, but they didn't realize you were their peace. You were their anchor. You were the mirror that showed them who they could have been if they had just chosen growth over ego. But they didn't. They turned from truth, and now truth follows them, quietly, persistently, like a shadow that won't leave no matter how fast they move. And here you are, not perfect, not untouched by the past, but healing, evolving, whole in ways you didn't even think were possible. You carry scars, yes, but also wisdom. You have boundaries now, but they're not walls, they're gates. You don't let just anyone in anymore. And you've learned that not everyone deserves the version of you that loves with depth and loyalty. The pain they caused became the ground you rebuilt your life on, and what they lost in their carelessness became the foundation of your strength. That's the paradox they never saw coming. They thought they had the power. But the real power came after the pain, in the rebuilding, in the silence they left behind, which became a space for your transformation. Now they live in a reality where they remember what they did, even if they don't speak of it, even if they deny it to others or to themselves. The memory of it is there. It shows up in their quiet moments. It echoes in the distance between them and the people who truly care. It reveals itself in the way they can't quite settle into peace, no matter how much they achieve or how many new people they surround themselves with. That's not revenge. That's not karma in the cliché sense. That's just truth returning home. That's just the natural order of things rebalancing. Because you can't harm someone deeply aligned with love and then expect life to hand you peace as a reward. You can't turn your back on sincerity and then expect meaning to flourish in the wake of your choices. So yes, they live in the house they built, but you walked away from the ruins and started building something new. You're no longer haunted by what they did. You've processed it, grown through it, and now you carry the quiet strength of someone who faced darkness without becoming it. And one day, maybe soon, maybe far down the line, they'll realize something, that the misery they feel, the hollowness they can't name, the instability they keep running into, it all began the moment they chose betrayal over truth. The moment they took for granted the rare light they once had in you. But by then, you won't be waiting. You won't be watching. You'll be living, fully, freely, rooted in the strength they never expected you to find. Because in the end, they didn't just lose you. They lost access to the version of themselves they could have become if they had chosen love, honesty, and growth over ego and control. And now they wake up every day inside the echo of that decision.